Over the last few years, more and more people are waking up to the fact that history is written by the victors. And even if they don't know exactly what the true history is, they can instinctually feel the things that we've been taught growing up are a lie. In fact, I remember when I went through my awakening back in 2015, and I had a degree in history education, and a friend of mine came up to me and said that most of the history I learned in school was wrong, and that there was this guy, Richard Grove. He had the Peace Revolution podcast, and he was talking about the real history. And I looked at my friend and I said, Richard Grove is an idiot, and I'll prove it to you. 3 days later, after a lot of listening and a lot of research and a lot of humility, I went back to my friend and I said that I was in fact the idiot, that Richard Grove really knew what he was talking about. And from that point forward, I realized that I not only had to relearn everything that I thought I knew about the world, everything I learned with my college degree, but I had to fundamentally restructure the way in which I evaluated information to make sure that the system's lies would never be registered as truth in my mind again. And to this day, with the homeschool company I built, a lot of what I do is built around that concept. The concept that we can give our kids intellectual self-defense. But it starts with understanding what's being done in the public school system so that we could see it, correct it, and build better systems. And what's undeniable with the public school system is that it is designed to teach young people what to think instead of how to think critically. And history is the best example of this because it's all about memorization of history that authorities have decided is true. But as we know, history is written by the victors. So young people have to memorize people, dates, and events. And if they could repeat that back, they're said to know history, but we know that's a load of bull, when they should be learning how to get back to primary documents, doing original research, and doing historical readings. But the school system doesn't want that because if it taught that, young people would learn how to see through the lies. But for the children of the rich and powerful at elite private schools, they learn history a different way. At elite private schools, it's all about getting back to primary documents. It's all about doing original research. We're going to get back to this word, original. And they do reading of historical figures on both sides of historical events. And what this allows their students to do is to formulate an original understanding, original theories as to what really conspired within historical events. So to sum it up, in public schools, young people are being taught to memorize and repeat so that they could be controlled by the narrative. But the children of the rich and powerful in elite private schools are being prompted to investigate and interpret history so that they could become the ones who control the narrative. So what is an example of how the way history is taught in public schools is used to control society as a whole? And one of the best places to look is the way the history of slavery is taught in American public schools. Now, for one, when you look at the education standards, American public schools are basically starting with the history of the Native Americans right into the history of slavery, and they are embedding these lessons into young people from a very young age before they have any context as to the history of the world. And they teach that America's founding fathers had slavery and that America was plagued by slavery in its early history, and it's framed as if this was some type of unique evil. And don't get me wrong, the history of slavery is definitely a stain on America and a stain on all people in the history of the world. But that's the key. It's a stain on all people in the history of the world. And the truth of the matter is that there had been slavery for thousands of years in the Ottoman Empire and thousands of years with the sub-African slave trade and thousands of years with the sub-Indian slave trade. And they had chattel slavery, and they had really the worst type of slavery where men could enslave foreign peoples and turn the woman into concubines. I'm trying to keep this PG, but I think you know where I'm going with this. And millions of people have been enslaved all over the world throughout every civilization for thousands of years. And then late in our history, the Europeans developed the transatlantic slave trade, and Europeans, being the very successful industrialists that they are, really made this systematic. And it was an ugly thing that happened here, even though, another thing that they don't teach, the overwhelming majority of slaves in the transatlantic slave trade were actually going to South America, and they were controlled by Spain. But America would ultimately correct that wrong, and Britain would ultimately correct that wrong. And it was actually the United States of America and the United Kingdom, Britain, that would not only have a moral epiphany about slavery, but Britain, the United States of America, and the West would actually lead the charge to end slavery not only in the West, but everywhere in the world. The British actually had something called the North African Squadron, which patrolled the seas looking for slave ships going anywhere in the world, and they freed hundreds of thousands of people that would have been slaves. And if it wasn't for the United States of America, and if it wasn't for Britain, and if it wasn't for the West, there would still be legalized slavery to this day all over the world, in South America, in Africa, in the Middle East. So the truth is that the American people and Britain and the West should be very proud of the history around slavery, because they were at the forefront. They were really some of the only people in the history of the world that decided that slavery was a moral evil, and they had an obligation to eradicate it. And you see how the shift in this narrative, when you understand history from a contextual level, from a real level, that it completely changes the narrative around how you understand your country's history. Because the truth of the matter is that the United States of America is a beacon of liberty, and it laid the groundwork which ultimately led to the end of an institution that had plagued not just the United States of America, not just Britain, but all people all over the world for pretty much all of recorded human history. But in schools, they use a cherry-picked history to basically teach young people that America was rotten at its foundation, and therefore they should turn against the Constitution, the Bill of Rights, and the Declaration of Independence. This is why it's so important to teach our kids real history. And the beautiful thing is that this is something you can do all on your own by having your children read primary documents and the writings of people on both sides of historical events, including the worst people, because it's so important that they're actually understanding what the perspectives of all these people were, so that they could develop their own unique understanding of history. And by doing this, they gain the ability to deconstruct not only history, but deconstruct present day lies in real time. And that's the real power of understanding history. You can do this on your own, but if you want help with it, this is what I love to help families with. I teach history classes myself. We have a ton of pre-recorded history courses, live history courses, and by teaching children right, we're really teaching them how to discern and understand the world around them. www.classicallearner.com. And of course, don't forget to check out Cubs to Bears books. classicallearner.com.